Everyone remembers Ronald Reagan's smile. It was warm, disarming, steady, the kind of expression that made people feel like everything was going to be all right, even when the world was anything but calm. For decades, Americans looked at that smile and saw hope, reassurance, and quiet confidence. But what most people never knew was that Reagan's famous smile wasn't something he learned from a camera, a stage, or a public life. It came from a moment long before anyone knew his name, from a quiet corner of a small home, from a night marked by fear, uncertainty, and a soft voice that told a trembling boy how to keep moving forward. Before that night, Reagan's smile looked like any other child's, spontaneous, bright, careless. But after that night, it became something else entirely, something deeper, something learned. A smile that could hide pain without letting bitterness take root. A smile that offered calm when the world inside felt anything but calm. It happened when he was no more than a boy, small, thin, with wide eyes that saw more than he ever said out loud. The house he grew up in was modest, with creaking floors, mismatched furniture, and windows that shivered when the wind blew too hard. But it was home, and his mother filled it with warmth wherever she could. She was the steady one, the constant one, the one who taught him how to find light in the dark. His father, on the other hand, was unpredictable. Some nights he came through the door laughing, telling stories, lifting Ronnie onto his shoulders and carrying him around the living room until they were both dizzy with joy. But other nights when the world had turned on him, or when the bottle had found him before he found his family, he came home cold, silent, or angry at things no one could see. On those nights, Ronnie learned to listen carefully, to the sound of the front steps, to the rhythm of footsteps, to the way the doorknob turned. And on one particular night, the rhythm was wrong. Reagan remembered it clearly, even decades later, the heavy thud against the door, the muffled curse, the slow slide down the porch steps. He had been in bed, the blankets pulled up to his chin, staring at the ceiling as he waited for the familiar sounds that told him whether the night would be safe or frightening. But this night brought neither, only silence. And silence, he had learned, could be worse. His mother moved through the house like a shadow, quick and quiet. She cracked his door, just enough to whisper, "Stay here, Ronnie," before closing it again. But he didn't stay. He waited a moment long enough to be sure she was gone, then slipped out of bed, pressing his bare feet to the cold wooden floor. He crept down the hallway, hands brushing the wall to guide himself in the dark. At the top of the stairs, he paused, careful not to let them creak beneath his weight. He listened. His mother's voice was gentle, calm. His father's voice was strained, not angry, not loud, just defeated. Reagan moved closer. He wanted to help, though he didn't know how. But when he turned the corner toward the living room, his mother suddenly appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her face pale with worry. When she saw him, she didn't scold him. She didn't send him back to bed. Instead, she reached out and took his hand. "Come with me," she whispered. She led him to the small sitting room off the kitchen, the one with the worn armchair and the little mirror above the fireplace. She lit the lamp on the table, its warm glow filling the room with soft, golden light. Then she knelt before him, placing her hands gently on his cheeks. "Ronnie," she said softly, "there are things in life we can't control, people we can't change, nights we can't fix." Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to hide it. "But we can choose how we face them." He swallowed hard. "Is he okay?" She hesitated just long enough for Reagan to understand the truth. "He will be," she said. "But right now, you need to be strong." Reagan looked down at his small hands and whispered, "I don't feel strong." His mother lifted his chin, guiding his gaze to the mirror. "Look at yourself," she said. "What do you see?" He stared into the glass at the frightened boy with large eyes and trembling lips. The reflection looked back at him uncertainly. "I see me," he said quietly. She nodded. "Yes, and now I want you to do something for me." She placed her hands on his shoulders, steady and warm. "I want you to smile." He blinked at her in confusion. "What?" "Because sometimes," she whispered, "a smile isn't just about being happy. Sometimes it's a way of telling the world you're not giving up." She brushed a strand of hair back from his forehead. "It's a way of protecting the good inside you." Reagan looked back at the mirror. He tried to smile, or at least make the shape of one, but it wobbled and faltered. His mother guided him gently. "Not a big smile," she said, "just a gentle one. The kind that says, I'm still here. I'm still trying." Slowly, carefully, he lifted the corners of his mouth. The smile was small, fragile, uncertain, but it held something quiet, something resilient. His mother nodded with approval. "That's it. It doesn't feel real," Reagan whispered. "It doesn't have to be," she said softly. "It just has to be yours." She stood and wrapped her arms around him, holding him close. He could feel her heartbeat, steady, strong, everything he wanted to be. After a moment, she pulled back and looked at him again. "Whenever the world feels heavy," she said, "whenever you're scared, or tired, or unsure, give yourself that smile, not to hide how you feel, but to remind yourself that you can face it." Reagan swallowed, his chest tight. "Will it help, Dad?" he asked. His mother brushed a tear from his cheek. "It will help you," she said, "and one day, it may help others too." The lamp flickered softly, casting warm light across the small room. Reagan turned back to the mirror, practicing the quiet smile, the one that wasn't quite happy, but wasn't defeated either, a smile that made him look a little less afraid. Behind him, his mother's reflection appeared, standing with her hands clasped, watching him with an expression full of love and sorrow and hope, all at once. That was the moment the smile became more than a reflex, more than a mask, more than a habit. It became a promise to himself that he would not let the hardest parts of life steal the gentlest parts of his heart, a promise that he would face fear with calm, pain with patience, and uncertainty with grace. He didn't know then how far that promise would carry him, how many lights it would spark, how many people it would reassure, how many storms it would weather. He only knew that, in the quiet glow of that small lamp, he had learned something he would never forget. Strength doesn't always roar. Sometimes it smiles. Reagan practiced the smile once more before his mother blew out the lamp. Then she took his hand and led him upstairs. As they passed the living room, he caught a glimpse of his father slumped in a chair, eyes closed, face heavy with exhaustion and regret. Reagan wanted to go to him, to say something, do something, but his mother squeezed his hand gently, telling him without words that it wasn't his burden to carry. That night, as he lay in bed, Reagan thought about the mirror, about the tremble in his mother's voice, about the way the smile had steadied something inside him, and he didn't know it then. Couldn't possibly know, but that fragile, quiet smile would one day become one of the most recognizable expressions in America. The smile that reassured millions, the smile that calmed tensions, soothed fears, and reminded people they weren't alone. The smile born in a small room, under soft lamplight, on a night when a boy learned that even in the midst of uncertainty, there is always a small light inside worth protecting. The rest of the story, what happened the next morning, the conversation with his father, and the moment that cemented that smile into the man he would become, comes in part 2. When morning finally came, the house was still, the kind of stillness that feels both peaceful and fragile at the same time. The light filtered through the thin curtains in pale streaks, brushing against the floorboards like soft strokes of paint. Reagan woke slowly, blinking away the remnants of the night before. For a moment, he wondered if it had all been a dream. The quiet room, his mother's trembling voice, the mirror, the smile that didn't feel quite real. But then he saw the faint glow beneath his door and heard the muffled clink of dishes from the kitchen. His mother was awake, and reality settled back in like a weight he wasn't quite ready for. He dressed quietly, pulling on the shirt that was slightly too big for him, then tiptoed toward the stairs. Halfway down, he paused. His father sat at the small kitchen table, elbows on his knees, head bowed into his hands. The sight made Reagan freeze. His father, once towering and loud and full of stories, looked small, defeated, like someone who had lost a battle only he knew he was fighting. His mother moved around him calmly, placing a cup of coffee in front of him. Her hands brushed his shoulder gently. "The way you touch someone you love, even when they're hard to love." Reagan's heart pounded. He wanted to slip back upstairs, to avoid the moment entirely, but his mother looked up and saw him standing on the stairs. "Good morning, Ronnie," she said softly. His father lifted his head. His eyes were tired, rimmed red. He looked at his son for a long moment, too long, as if searching for something in his face. Reagan stood there, frozen, unsure what expression to wear. Then, instinctively, he remembered the night before, his mother's words, the mirror, the fragile smile. He swallowed, lifted the corners of his mouth just slightly, and gave the smallest, gentlest smile he could manage. Not cheerful, not fake, just steady. His father's eyes softened. He exhaled slowly, wiping a hand across his face. "Come here, Ronnie," he said quietly. Reagan descended the stairs, each step slow and deliberate. When he reached the table, his father rested a trembling hand on the back of the empty chair. "Sit with me," Reagan did. The wooden chair creaked beneath him. He stared at the worn tabletop, the small scratches and stains that told the story of years spent, their family meals, spilled drinks, quiet conversations, heated arguments, all the pieces of a family trying its best. His father cleared his throat. "About last night," his voice cracked slightly. I didn't mean for you to see me like that." Reagan didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. He only kept the small, steady smile on his face, not to hide his feelings, but to keep himself from sinking into the fear he still felt. His father continued, looking down at his clasped hands. "Sometimes I mess up, more than sometimes." He let out a bitter laugh. "Your old man isn't as strong as he looks." Reagan lifted his eyes. "I know," he said softly. His father blinked, surprised by the honesty, but there was no judgment in Reagan's voice, just truth. "And I'm sorry," his father whispered. "I really am." Reagan's mother moved across the kitchen quietly, placing food on the counter. She didn't interfere. She didn't guide the moment. She simply let it happen. After a long silence, Reagan's father looked at him again, eyes full of something raw, a mix of shame, love, regret, and longing. "You deserve better than what I gave you last night." Reagan hesitated, then asked the question he'd been afraid to say out loud. "Were you hurting?" His father's shoulders fell. "Sometimes," he whispered, "the world feels like it's pressing too hard on me. I try to push back, but I'm not always strong enough." Reagan nodded slowly. "I know what that feels like," he said quietly. His father stared at him, startled. "You do?" Reagan thought of the mirror, the trembling lips, the small smile, the weight he felt even as a child. "Yes," he said simply. His father swallowed hard, as if trying to digest the truth that his own son understood something he wished he didn't. The silence between them shifted, softened, and then, unexpectedly, his father reached out and placed a rough, warm hand on top of Reagan's smaller one. "You're stronger than I ever was at your age," he said. "You've got something steady in you. I don't know where it came from, but I see it." Reagan didn't know how to respond. He only nodded. His father squeezed his hand once before pulling back. "Whatever you become, Ronnie, don't lose that. Don't let the world take it from you." Reagan looked at him for a long moment. Then he gave that small, almost fragile smile again, the one he had practiced the night before, the one his mother had taught him, the one that said, "I'm trying, I'm here, I won't break." His father inhaled sharply, as if the smile itself reached into him and steadied something he'd forgotten how to hold. "Where'd you learn that look?" he asked softly. Reagan hesitated. "Mom helped me." His father nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "She always knew how to bring out the best in people." His mother turned then, leaning against the counter, with a tired smile of her own. "Breakfast is ready," she said gently. They ate in silence, but it wasn't the heavy silence of the night before. It was a healing silence, a fragile piece, stitching itself back together thread by thread. After breakfast, Reagan's father stood, reached for his coat, and paused. He rested a hand on Reagan's shoulder. "Thank you," he said softly, "for smiling at me this morning." Then he left for work, closing the door behind him without a slam or stagger, just a quiet click. Reagan sat at the table long after he was gone, staring at the place where his father had stood. His mother joined him, sitting beside him, brushing his hair back like she had done when he was small. "You did something important today," she whispered. "I didn't do anything," Reagan said. "I just smiled." "That's not just anything," she whispered. "Sometimes a soft smile can hold a family together more than any loud words." Reagan leaned into her shoulder, letting the warmth of her steady presence fill the cracks left by the night before. Over the next weeks, he practiced the smile without even realizing it, not because anyone asked him to, but because it made the world feel a little less sharp. When he helped neighbors carry groceries, when he answered questions at school, when his father came home tired but sober, when he looked in the mirror each morning and tried to find the brave version of himself he had met that night, the smile became part of him, a calm against storms, a shield without hostility, a light that didn't blind, only warmed. He didn't use it to hide his feelings. He used it to manage them, to steady himself, to soften the world. And something strange happened. People responded to it. Adults, children, teachers, strangers. A smile that wasn't pasted on, but chosen gently, intentionally, touched something in them, made them breathe easier, made them relax. It made Reagan feel powerful, not in a controlling way, not in a loud way, but in a quiet, steady, human way. It made him realize something. If a small smile could change a morning, could soften a hard man's heart, could ease a frightened child, then maybe, just maybe, it could one day reach even further. Years later, when he stood on stages and spoke to millions, when he greeted workers in factories, when he comforted families who had lost loved ones, when he walked hospital corridors after tragic events, people noticed the same thing, the smile, always the smile. The one that said, "You're going to be all right." The one that said, "I see you." The one that said, "We'll get through this." The one born on a night when a boy learned to be brave in front of a mirror, guided by a mother who believed strength didn't need to shout. When asked about it years later, Reagan would chuckle and give a vague answer, something about Midwestern optimism or just part of who I am. But the real story, the real reason, the real moment, lived quietly inside him. It was never about the cameras, never about politics, never about charm. It was a survival skill that became a gift, a personal lesson that became a public language, a small act of courage that became a symbol of hope. The secret behind Reagan's smile wasn't joy, it wasn't confidence, it wasn't charisma. It was a promise that no matter how heavy the world became, he would carry light in his face. For himself, for his father, for the frightened boy he once was, and for everyone who needed to borrow a little strength from him. If this story touched you, I'd be honored if you stayed for the next one. Please consider liking the video, leaving a comment, and subscribing to the channel. Your support keeps these quiet stories alive.